Genshin Impact Story Time, the prologue before the prologue. Our story starts with someone reciting a story back to someone else. It tells of how our protagonist fell from one world into the current one. I assume they had a parachute, since they are currently living and not an organic soup, but this is not clarified. Upon their arrival, they decided they didn't really like the new world all that much. Maybe it was too hot, and they couldn't stand the heat. So together with their sibling, they have a sibling by the way, they decide to try and hop over the border into the next world, but unfortunately for them, they're stopped by border control. The officer turns out to be a LARPer, claiming herself to be the sustainer of heavenly principles, whatever that means, mumbling something like, "The irrigation of mankind ends now," just before attempting to launch them into the air. What she did not anticipate was that they had wings, like little dragonfly wings. Cute. They flew out of the way of the attack and drew their swords. Where were they hiding them? I have no idea. In response, the chief border control officer sends her cube goons out to detain the escapees, but they manage to avoid the cube army through their aero-acrobatic skills and clash with the chief officer head on. At this point, everybody seems to just stop. It's like time had frozen. I guess they just all agreed that now was a good time for a little break. But this break serves as a perfect time to introduce our siblings. First up, the sister. Her name is Susan. But Susan isn't the true protagonist in this timeline, but somewhere in a parallel universe, she most definitely is. No, our actual protagonist is her brother, Joseph Isaac Morris, Jr., but we'll call him Jim for short. We will only call him Jim Jr. when Jim Sr. is around, so we'll stick to Jim for now, but if by chance his daddy shows up in the story at a later date, we will refer to him as Jim Jr. Border Control eventually got bored of standing around and attempted to pull a fast one on Jim, but he was nimble and avoided the attack. Distracted by her brother's pure magnificence, Susan got caught off guard and was consumed by the cube goons. I assume she was taken to a facility to be processed or something. Shocked and angered by this, Jim attempts to free his sister by unleashing a surprise attack on the border control chief, but she was just pretending to be distracted. Oh no! She suppresses his attack with the aid of her cube friends and sends him off for processing. As Jim is dragged away, he pleads, "Give my sister back!" But it appears the border chief just doesn't give a fuck. To make matters worse for Jim, they confiscated his dragonfly wings, magically appearing sword, and sealed away any other powers he might have had. When he eventually awoke, he found he was now all alone, until one day he decided to catch some fish because he was hungry. But on that day he was especially unlucky. He didn't catch a fish, not even a water-sodden boot. No, what he got was a floating child. Her name is Paimon, by the way. Imagine you go fishing, catch a fish that imposes itself into your life, claims to be your friend and a guide to help you solve all your problems, but instead of actually being useful, it just constantly spills secret information and gets distracted by food and treasure. That's Paimon. Are you winning, son? So here marks the start of our story. Traveller Joseph Isaac Morris, Jim for short, and the floating child, Paimon. Together they set off into the wide world of Teyvat, in hopes to find Jim's sister, Susan, or the god of border control.
少し寂しくなるからこの瞬間一つになれた気持ちをずっと温めて宝物にしようそうさどんなに負けそうでもまた力になるよもっとスパイスパイ顔を上げて笑ってみせてもっと輝けるように今胸に誓って
この番組はご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りします。